Good morning. I'm Zinclair Samoa in for Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers right now on Morning News Now. Flipped changes on Capitol Hill more than 1 week after the midterms. This morning, NBC News is projecting Republicans have taken back the House, setting the stage for 2 years of gridlock in Congress. We have team coverage on the results and the reaction. Plus, what it could all mean for Donald Trump's 2024 presidential run. On the defensive, this morning, tension between Ukraine and its allies after 2 people were killed by a missile in NATO territory. Ukraine's president rejecting claims that the missile came from his country's air defense system.
Whatever the final conclusions may be, the world knows that Russia bears ultimate responsibility for this incident.
The latest on the fallout, including the emergency meeting between President Biden and NATO allies. Terror threat, top lawmakers blasting the FBI and other government agencies over what they call domestic extremism on social media. We'll dig into what this massive report is revealing and the blame it places on sites like TikTok and Twitter for incentivizing harmful content. And a show of support for Amber Heard months after losing that high-profile defamation trial against her ex-husband, Johnny Depp. The open letter signed by some big names that's sending a message to all survivors of domestic abuse. We're going to begin this morning with the latest on the midterm elections and what broke late last night, that new majority in the House of Representatives.
That's right. NBC News is projecting that Republicans will control the House for the next 2 years after winning enough seats to have a majority in the chamber. The win that put it over the top for the GOP, that came in California's 27th congressional district, where Republican incumbent Mike Garcia defeated Democratic challenger Christy Smith. The GOP's slim majority in the House means divided government will return to Washington, with Democrats controlling the Senate. And this morning, both parties are assessing the fallout from the midterms while looking toward what the next 2 years will bring on Capitol Hill.
We have team coverage for you on all these key developments this morning. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa is here, along with NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray, and our anchor buddy, by the way, on the day post-election. And here we are, still post-election results rolling in. Good to have you both with us. Ali, I will begin with you. We want to talk about what this new round of sort of the split in Congress means for both parties. We know overall it likely means a lot of gridlock. So I want to ask you something specific that maybe we can kind of understand. What could this mean for the future of existing committees, like, for example, the January 6th committee in the House?
Yeah, well, that's just one of the things that we expect to change. When you look at the slim majorities that the Democrats have on the Senate side and Republicans have on the House side, you can see how difficult it's going to be for President Biden and Congress to get anything done these last 2 years of President Biden's first term. A Democratic Senate majority no doubt gives President Biden an advantage when filling key committee assignments, filling judicial appointments, filling a Supreme Court seat if the opportunity arises over the next 2 years. But a Republican majority in the House really is setting up just a stalling of President Biden's agenda. House Republicans have already said, they've been saying for months, that they plan to investigate Hunter Biden, President Biden's son, and his business dealings. They plan to start impeachment proceedings. They've already said that they plan to dissolve the January 6th committee investigating the attack on the Capitol as it stands right now. They've also said that they plan to pass a bill to secure the border within their first few weeks of reaching this majority. So definitely teeing up a very difficult 2 years, but there's already been an olive branch extended. We saw President Biden last night when Republicans reached that 218-seat threshold to reach the majority, congratulate Republicans and say he's willing to work across the aisle to get something done over the next 2 years.
And Mark, I want to bring you in here because notably it took more than a week for the GOP to get this majority in the House after already losing out on the Senate. So what do you think that says in terms of their messaging to voters this cycle, especially after their predictions of a red wave in the midterms?
Yeah, of all the surprises that we ended up seeing from the election, maybe the biggest surprise of all was that it took 8 days to call the House of Representatives in control for Republicans. Remember, Republicans only needed to flip a net of 5 seats to win control, one of the lowest bars that we've seen over the last century in covering American politics and midterm elections. And Republicans ended up doing it. But what it really does show you is that red wave that so many people were talking about, that and even some Democrats had been fearing, really did fizzle out. And when you ended up taking President Biden's low approval ratings, the 70% of Americans who think the country was headed in the wrong direction, the thought was that that was going to topple Democratic incumbents as well as have Republicans win open seats. But as we ended up seeing, Democrats actually held their own, whether it was their incumbents or some of those open seats. And that's why it took so long to call the race, in addition to those long counts that we've all been following in California and the West Coast.
Let's talk about leadership now. And Allie, now that the GOP has this majority locked up, where things stand with Kevin McCarthy's campaign to become Speaker. Also, what does this mean for Nancy Pelosi's future in the House?
Yeah, so we're expecting to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later this morning about her future plans. She could either decide to stay in Democratic leadership that she's held for almost 2 decades now, or decide to step down. I know we saw President Biden wish for the latter earlier this week, hoping she would stay in Congress. As far as the House's top Republican, Kevin McCarthy, this is nearly a decade-long road for him to become Speaker, and it's still facing roadblocks. We saw him win that nomination earlier this week against House Freedom Caucus member Congressman Andy Biggs, who decided to challenge McCarthy at the last minute. Andy Biggs only getting 31 votes in his caucus, but those 31 votes are votes that Kevin McCarthy is going to need on January 3rd when the final election for the speakership happens. So that we've seen Freedom Caucus members really withhold their support for McCarthy, saying that they're making a list of demands, demanding some concessions by McCarthy to win their support. At the end of the day, the reality is that McCarthy needs those House Freedom Caucus members just as much as they need him to get anything done over the next 2 years, Savannah.
And I'd love to end wide, Mark, because we have a clear picture now on the majorities in both chambers of Congress. So what's your lasting impression from these midterm elections? Do you think these results will serve as a roadmap for both parties in the years to come?
Yeah, my takeaway is just how little actually changed despite the billions of dollars spent and all of the 2 years of campaigning. And what we ended up seeing on the House side is that only 7 incumbents ended up losing re-election, 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans. We saw only 1 incumbent governor go down to defeat. That was Nevada Democrat Steve Sisolak. And not a single incumbent senator ended up losing re-election, although we still need to watch what ended up happening in that Georgia runoff for next month. But you all add all of those things up, and you just see how little the political movement really, the political lines barely budge this midterm cycle as now we all head into 2024.
Mark Murray and Ali Rafa, thank you both so much.
Let's turn our attention now to the war in Ukraine and the ongoing fallout from that missile explosion in Poland. Yesterday, NATO, Poland, and the United States all said it was likely the missile that fell in a Polish village and killed 2 people came from Ukraine's air defense system. That assessment is being disputed by Ukraine's President Zelensky, who said he had, quote, no doubt that it was not a Ukrainian missile. It's a claim put to President Biden on his return to the White House from the G20 in Indonesia.
What's your reaction to President Zelensky saying that the missiles that landed in Poland were not Ukrainian?
That's not the evidence.
That's not the evidence. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now to talk about this. Keir, it's good to see you. So President Zelensky is sticking to his claim that this was not a Ukrainian missile, despite what NATO is saying. So what's the latest on the investigation into this explosion? And is Ukraine likely to get access to the site, which it is asking for?
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward, isn't it, for Western leaders, for the White House and for Ukraine. This is a division in opinion, a division in outlook, and it's being made public. And that's not really what Western leaders or Ukraine want, because, of course, what they've tried to do is maintain a united front in respect of Russia. But look, President Zelensky is saying that his officials have told him that this was likely a Russian missile. He says it makes no sense for me not to trust them. I've gone through the war with them. He then says, a little bit cryptically, God forbid some missile debris killed these people and we have to apologize. But first, there needs to be an investigation. Again, it's a little bit awkward because effectively what the president of Ukraine is saying is that the Ukrainians want access to the site in Poland in order to confirm for themselves what the West is saying is true. They're supposed to be united. So it's difficult. And ultimately, there is some frustration, I have to say, among European leaders that Ukraine is taking this stance, because they do seem fairly convinced that this was a missile defense system, possibly an S-300 Soviet-made missile defense system used by the Ukrainians. And maybe that's part of the reason for the confusion, because, again, if it was Soviet-made but fired by the Ukrainians, you can see why people may make a misjudgment in the early stages. Yeah, definitely confusing and complicated. And Kira, I do want to focus on what's happening inside Ukraine, because this morning there are reports of strikes in Odessa and Dnipro, among other places. So what exactly is going on? Yeah, it's important to remember that this is a continuing wave of airstrikes by the Russians, and that is where President Biden and Western leaders are trying to put the focus, saying, look, what happened in Poland is not Ukraine's fault, even if it was a Ukrainian air defense system. So just, for example, the latest news that 4 have been killed and more than a dozen are wounded from drone and missile strikes around Ukraine. Ukrainian officials saying they shot down 2 cruise missiles and 5 Iranian-made drones. Now, that is an improving rate of success for the Ukrainians, and perhaps that is because that they have now been helped a little bit by Western-supplied air defences. Yeah, look, the picture is of a ongoing Russian offensive in the air over Ukraine, and perhaps, and it's been said already, perhaps what happened in Poland is somewhat inevitable when there's a war taking place right next door. And you've broken down well what we're seeing on the ground. But on the diplomatic front, it looks like the Black Sea grain deal between Ukraine and Russia has been extended again. That matters because we know the war has impacted the world food supply and grain supply. So what can you tell us about that specifically? Yeah, extended for another 120 days after the deal was in its 4th month. You know, this is a grain deal, a fertilizer deal, foodstuffs deal. It was days away from expiring, and what it means is that these essential foodstuffs can be exported through the Black Sea, which is, of course, part of the war zone, if you like, between Russia and Ukraine. It can be exported through there to places that are so important, like, for example, East Africa, where I was just a few weeks ago, where there is this expanding food crisis. The implications of having that blockade in the Black Sea reinstated would have been crippling, and it would have happened because, despite the fact that the Russians perhaps might not have fired on ships, the insurers who insure those ships can sail would likely have said, well, we're not going to insure them if there's a risk of a continuing conflict in that zone. So very, very important. A breakthrough. The West, the UN, Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, all involved in extending that. Important analysis. Keir Simmons, thank you.
Let's get more on the war in Ukraine with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, of course, I want to start with that explosion in Poland and now specifically this tension that we're seeing between Ukraine and NATO over the origins of that mission. Now, there's this investigation that's ongoing, but Ukraine was quick to pin the blame on Russia when it happened. And they're saying they doubt NATO's initial findings anyway, that it was likely Ukrainian, part of their air defense system as it was trying to protect itself from these Russian missiles. What do you make of all this? And are you concerned that incidents like this, as we see, you know, just how easily this can spill over into a bordering country, put the U.S. at risk of getting dragged into this conflict in a more boots on the ground type of way?
Yeah, you hit it, the nail right on the head. Those are exactly the things that I'm concerned about. And when you look at the actually where that missile landed, you look at where Russia sent its caliber missiles that it attacked that day, it actually makes a lot of sense that a Ukrainian anti-aircraft missile missed its target and then landed in Poland. So, I mean, I don't know why the president of Ukraine is going to such lengths to contradict, the president of the United States and all of the Western European leaders, because it's an act or it's an accident that happens in war, and it's just unfortunate. But I think they should move on from it. But the bigger issue that you point out to is this exposes just the risk that anything could happen. An accident, a miscalculation, a mistake could draw the United States in. Because imagine if instead of hitting a farm, this had hit some of the U.S. troops in Poland or some of the other Western NATO allies. You can understand that we'd be having a very different conversation this morning if that had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to kind of talk about where this could go from here and what you anticipated. I know you actually wrote a piece outlining something kind of similar to this. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, though, I want to play some sound from General Mark Milley speaking about Ukraine's chances of a military, specifically, victory in this war. First, let's listen to that.
The probability of a Ukrainian military victory, defined as kicking the Russians out of all of Ukraine, to include what they define or what they claim as Crimea, the probability of that happening anytime soon is not high, militarily. Politically, there may be a political solution where politically the Russians withdraw. That's possible.
So as we heard there, General Milley doesn't think there's this high probability of Ukraine, winning militarily, though a political solution might be possible. Do you agree with that? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, that actually, in this 1945 piece that you're referring to, I actually point that out, that there's not a military solution that even is on the cards that Ukraine could drive Russia out, because the capacity is just not there. At the same time that Russia has just mobilized hundreds of thousands of more troops that are on the way in there. So Milley is completely right. There is no military path for Ukraine to win the war as defined by kicking the Russians out. So that leaves the only alternative, the most rational alternative, is a diplomatic solution. The big problem comes in that right now that Zelensky doesn't want to have a negotiation, because that would mean he would have to cede some territory. Russia right now doesn't want negotiations because they think this winter offensive is going to win them even more territory. And so right now, until that plays out, I don't think there's even any possibility of a negotiated settlement, though I think that's what should happen to save Ukrainian people.
Very quickly, before I let you go, walk us through the rest of these objectives that you sort of wrote here for Russia's winter offensive.
Yeah, they have. There's a couple of several different options where they could have what's called like a low risk opportunity, where they just try to bring these troops in, these new troops, and defend what they currently have. There's a medium risk where they'll try to maybe complete capture of the Donbass, and then in some of the other areas, maybe retake Kherson and then hold there. The problem with each of those is that leaves Ukraine in a position to launch another offensive later on. So I think, as I'll talk about later, that the biggest risk is a large-scale offensive by the Russians to completely devastate most of eastern Ukraine.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thank you so much for your time this morning. Important conversation.
And now back to the U.S. A new investigation by the Senate Homeland Security Committee is blasting the FBI, DHS, and leading social media companies. In the 128-page report obtained by NBC News, the committee accused the agencies of not doing enough to tackle the growing threat of domestic terrorism, especially white supremacist and anti-government extremists. For more, we're joined by NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian. Ken, good morning. So simply, can you just tell us more about this report? What do we need to know?
Good morning, Zinkley. Well, the first thing to know is this is the Democratic Senate majority of the Homeland Security Committee criticizing agencies led by the Biden administration. So it's worth paying attention to that. But this is not about politics. It's about bureaucratic inertia. As far as this committee is concerned, they have looked at the responses from the FBI and DHS to this growing threat of domestic terrorism. And what they found is that those agencies are still stuck in the past, still spending more money on the threat from international terrorism, even though officials come before Congress year after year and say the real threat is domestic violent extremists, particularly white supremacists and anti-government extremists. And this report also says that neither the FBI nor DHS can give anybody a good picture of what the actual terrorist threat is out there. And before the January 6th riots, arrests by the FBI in domestic terrorism cases had actually gone down. Now, obviously, they've spiked because the January 6th riots was a huge case. And on the social media company side, the committee says that essentially these major platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, their business models are based around an idea that promotes extremism, because engagement often requires people to be angry and emotional, and that means that they engage more with extreme content.
I've heard the term hate shares, right? That emotional sharing online. I wonder, how are the FBI, DHS looking at social media giants like Meta and Twitter, and how are they responding to these accusations?
The FBI and DHS both responded essentially saying we're doing a pretty good job on domestic terrorism without really addressing the systemic issues raised in the report. Most of the social media companies also responded by saying that they try to take extremist content down whenever they see it, content that violates their terms of service. But what the report said is what they need to do is a better job on the front end with their algorithms that drive people to the extremist content. And that's a bigger issue because essentially that goes at the business model of these social media companies.
And Ken, you talked about the algorithms. What other changes does the Senate Homeland Security Committee want to address the threat of domestic extremists?
This report calls for a fundamental rethink of the domestic terrorism issue in the U.S. government. They want, for example, the DHS to appoint a domestic terrorism coordinator. They want unified definitions because there aren't any across FBI and DHS. On the social media side, they want Congress to impose more accountability on these companies to require them to steer people away from extremist content. But that gets into First Amendment issues, as you guys know, and it's very complicated, and there's not a sort of unified will for what to do in terms of how to regulate these social media platforms.
Time will tell if we get that, Will. Ken Delanian, thank you.
Now, this morning, we're tracking a historic lake effect snow event expected to be measured in feet. So let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
That's right. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. And it's going to be a lot of feet. We could see 4 feet of snow, maybe 5 feet of snow in some spots. Certainly going to be historical. It's going to rival the storm from 2014 where we saw 65 inches. And take a look at this. This is video out of central Michigan, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, where western Michigan was playing their rival central Michigan in a blizzard, whiteout conditions. But I love it so much because you could tell they're having so much fun. And if you watch this video, we have longer videos where the people in the stands are building snowmen, the cheerleaders, look at them. They're just having so much fun. That first snowfall of the year. And we're going to be seeing a lot of snow around the Great Lakes and more snow falling in central and western Michigan. This is what it looks like on radar right now. You can see the blue, and we're looking at some heavy snow falling. That's where you're seeing the lighter blue, almost the white color. And that's downwind of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. That's going to continue today. It's going to pick up today, tomorrow also. It's going to continue into the weekend. We could see heavy snow, too, in western Michigan. So this is what it looks like along the Great Lakes. Again, heavy snow. Where these bands set up, that's where we're going to see the heaviest snow. Visibilities will be reduced down to 0 in some spots. It's going to make travel very difficult. The National Weather Service out of Buffalo is calling it a paralyzing event. It's going to be prolonged, too. So it's the cold winds moving across those warmer lakes, and that's where we're seeing that lake effect snow machine being triggered. And then we're going to see the snow continuing tomorrow, piling up on the east side of the lake. Strong winds, difficult travel, and poor visibility. It's going to affect the roadways. It's going to affect the airways as well. Winter alerts posted for Wisconsin and Michigan along the Great Lakes, including Watertown, Buffalo, Erie, and even portions of northeastern Ohio could see a lot of snow, as well as northwestern Pennsylvania. This is what it looks like in terms of your snowfall forecast. Where you see those brighter colors, the pinks, the purples, that's where we're expecting the heaviest snow. So portions of western Michigan, the UP and Michigan as well, and also downwind of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And again, 4 feet is possible, 5 feet are even possible. We're going to see 2 inches per hour for 24 to 36, even more for several days. We're going to see a lot of snow. We could see some thunder snow as well. That's going to add to some of the energy as well. So we're looking at impacts in the air. Buffalo probably seeing ground stops and delays, very likely major delays, and moderate delays in Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, and also Chicago. So we have the snow. We also have really cold air coast to coast. Once again, the coldest air of the season today. So freeze alerts from the Carolinas to the southeast along the Gulf Coast as well. Lows near or below 32 degrees. It's cold this morning, and look at tomorrow morning. People waking up to temperatures below 0. It's going to feel like 16 below 0 in Bismarck. It'll feel like 1 degree in Minneapolis, and it's going to feel like 8 degrees tomorrow morning in Chicago. Those morning lows are going to continue into next week, so we're not going to get a break very soon. Notice Pittsburgh in the 20s, even in the teens on Sunday. The single digits in Bismarck, 8 degrees as a low Monday morning. And we're going to keep those highs really chilly too, guys. We're going to look at temperatures anywhere from 10, 15 up to 30 degrees below normal for this time of year. So it's cold and it's snowy.
Michelle, here in New York at like 4:45 this morning when I took my dog out, there were a few little snowflakes, just like it wasn't anything heavy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I was like getting
that,
up close to it. Obviously, I can't see. I was like, just woke up. It's dark. But I was like, is that snow? It was crazy.
I can attest. I was just in the Great Lakes region.
I know it gets pushed from the Great Lakes, so it's the wind just bringing it down. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah,
it travels that far.
Just a little bit. I was into it. You know how I'm feeling. I'm all ready for this festive weather. All right, Michelle, thank you.
I know, it's fun. Thanks.
And coming up on Morning News Now, disturbing new information this morning about the shooting deaths of 3 University of Virginia football players.
After the break, what we're learning about the suspect as classmates and the community mourn. We will be right back. We're back now with new information this morning about the suspect involved in the shooting deaths of 3 University of Virginia football players earlier this week. 2 other people were also injured in that incident. NBC's Ryan Nobles joins us now with the latest on the investigation. Hey, Ryan, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. The team's coaches are still trying to determine if they're going to be able to play any of the games on their remaining schedule. They've canceled their game on Saturday, and they're still considering what to do with their big rivalry game to end the season against Virginia Tech. All this while a campus-wide memorial is being planned in honor of the 3 victims. This morning, the UVA campus finding ways to cope with their pain.
I feel like the least we could do is come out here and show our support and show our love.
A group of students who organize on social media, painting a bridge on campus in honor of the young victims.
And it's just really nice to know that everyone's able to do that and everyone's able to support each other.
Students returning to their studies after 2 days of canceled classes, as authorities ramp up their investigation into the alleged shooter, Christopher Darnell Jones. Prosecutors revealing they now believe Jones shot one of the victims, Devin Chandler, while he was asleep on a bus returning from a field trip.
Certainly it's a very, very challenging and difficult case.
The Washington Post speaking with student Ryan Lynch, who says she was on the trip. Lynch says she heard gunshots and hid, looking out from underneath her coat as she saw someone walking down the aisle of the bus. As she got up to leave, the Post writes, Lynch saw her friend Laval Davis Jr. shot. She tried to comfort him and call for help. Later, telling the Post of the victims, I know each one of them had somebody in our class trying to help them. I want their families to know that. In their last moments, they weren't alone. Questions also remain about the suspect's motive and how he got access to a gun. A sporting goods store outside of Richmond issuing a statement to say they sold Jones 2 different weapons in July. The purchase came after he tried to buy guns from the same store 2 different times and was turned down. One because he was under the age of 21, and again after he failed a background check. Jones was convicted of a concealed weapons charge in 2021. Virginia State Police now say they are investigating those purchases. Deshaun Perry's high school coach attempting to put into words the family's immeasurable loss.
Deshaun was a beautiful flower in our garden. We knew he was going to continue to grow. But, God picked that flower.
And we did reach out to Ryan Lynch to hear her story and have not heard back. The suspect, who is facing several charges, including 3 counts of second-degree murder, is being held without bond and has yet to enter a plea. Meanwhile, the parents of one of the 2 victims who survived, Michael Hollins, say that he's undergone 2 successful surgeries and he's on the road to recovery. Savannah?
All right, a little bit of good news there, Ryan. Thank you so much.
And now to the latest on the migrant crisis at the southern border. Texas continues shipping migrants to northern cities, and a new city has joined that list of destinations. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the story.
The latest bus to the northeast from Texas filled with migrants arrived this time to Philadelphia.
The kids are frightening. I mean, they're exhausted, they're tired.
Officials say a dehydrated 10-year-old girl on the bus had a high fever and was taken to a hospital.
We are prepared to deal with it, but it is absolutely inhumane that child had to go through that.
This man says he's from Nicaragua and came here to work. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who easily won re-election last week, has organized the migrant bus trips for months to New York City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago.
Texas must continue our unprecedented efforts to secure our border.
He says his office added Philadelphia because of its sanctuary city status and to provide much-needed relief to Texas's overwhelmed border communities. In New York, where they've been receiving buses full of migrants for months, the city's mayor and comptroller butting heads after the comptroller requested a detailed accounting of how much it costs to build tent facilities to house the asylum seekers.
We're not going to hide the cost of anything. We're going to release all the numbers because he's part of the process. I brief him after every budget. Brad, let's work together, Brad.
As of early November, the Adams administration reported that 23,800 asylum seekers have arrived in New York City. The city's independent budget office estimating that it will cost about $600 million over the course of a year to provide migrants shelter and services. New data out this week shows the number of migrants apprehended at the southern border in October was more than 230,000. That's an increase from September, and just shy of the record highs in April and May. We recently visited the Arizona border.
This area alone is seeing hundreds of asylum seekers each night.
And now concerned that more could be on the way. On Tuesday, a federal judge blocked the government from continuing to use a Trump-era public health emergency measure known as Title 42 to quickly expel migrants.
It's quite possible that we could see some overcrowding. And that's partly because people who can't be expelled under Title 42 are now going to be subject to harsher policies than in the past, because immigration law is harsher than public health law, which Title 42 is. That the Biden administration is going to struggle to make sure that they have enough beds available so as to avoid overcrowding like we've seen in the past.
Our thanks to Gabe Gutierrez for that report. And it's important to note that the Department of Homeland Security filed for a 5-week extension to prepare to bring Title 42 to an end. Yesterday, a judge granted that request, meaning Title 42 will officially end December 21st.
Let's get to some international headlines now, starting with yet another missile launch from North Korea and then increased tensions from the U.S. presence in the South.
Josh Letterman joins us now from London with that and more. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Savannah. South Korea's military says the missile flew about 150 miles at Mach 4 speed, and the launch came just after North Korea's top diplomat publicly chastised the U.S., South Korea, and Japan for President Biden's recent meeting with the allies, which was focused on the North Korean nuclear threat. Now North Korea is threatening even stronger military responses to U.S. military efforts in the region. Now to Egypt and the COP27 Global Climate Summit, where newly elected President Lula is getting a rock star welcome. He's promising to crack down on illegal deforestation in the Amazon and more global cooperation on climate change. That's a welcome change for environmentalists from former President Bolsonaro, who presided over mass deforestation in Brazil. And finally, to Kenya, where a television reporter was upstaged by an unlikely interruption from a young elephant in Nairobi, where this reporter was covering Kenya's drought. Video of the elephant's trunk popping up and then tickling the reporter's face quickly went viral, getting millions of views. Huge props to that reporter for being able to keep his cool. I don't know if I would have been able to do it. Savannah,
yeah, for a minute, it's like he's just letting it happen, like what's on my head, but...
It looks like he was trying to help him out. Maybe he had something going on.
Cute. Oh, my God. How fun. Wow, it was right in the middle of it all. All right, Josh, thank you so much. And coming up, a critical shortage of a life-saving antibiotic.
When we come back on Morning News Now, why amoxicillin is in short supply, plus why doctors are especially concerned about the timing of this shortage. Welcome back. If you're sick and have been prescribed the common antibiotic amoxicillin, you might notice it's a little more difficult to fill that prescription than usual, with the FDA now giving the drug currently in shortage status. Right now, nearly 24 amoxicillin products are listed on the agency's shortages page due to a spike in demand. And here's why. It's mainly used for ear, respiratory, and bacterial infections like strep throat. So the shortage is putting a strain on the healthcare system, and all of this is as health officials warn of a looming triple-demic, RSV, COVID, and the common cold, infections that have all surged this fall.
When the doctor came in to give us the diagnosis, she said, just so you know, there is an amoxicillin shortage.
There's a major drug shortage, alarming providers and parents like Stacy Ritchie.
I went straight to my normal pharmacy. They were out. Headed to the second pharmacy. They were out.
Today, amoxicillin, one of the most commonly used antibiotics, is hard to find. The Food and Drug Administration issuing a notice about a shortage of the drug. The American Society of Health System Pharmacists saying 3 major amoxicillin manufacturers are reporting shortages on products, including chewable tablets, capsules and powder, or suspension drugs, typically prescribed to children. Stacy is a parent of 3 kids in Kansas City, Missouri. Her daughter, Sophia Ritchie, diagnosed with strep throat.
I would have drove to another state to get the amoxicillin if I absolutely had to.
How did that feel as a parent to be worried about whether or not you could provide medicine to your child?
It was scary.
Hugh Chansey, a pharmacist and owner of Chansey Drugs, runs 6 pharmacies in southern Georgia.
Not having amoxicillin this time of year is a big deal. You're around holidays and children are getting sick.
He and other pharmacists began flagging shortages back in October.
We can only get 3 bottles a day.
How many bottles a day do you typically get when there's not a shortage?
Well, normally it would be unlimited. We could get whatever we needed.
In a prior statement to NBC, the FDA said that they're aware of some intermittent supply interruptions of amoxicillin products in the U.S. and that there are a number of factors that can cause or contribute to drug shortages that are out of the FDA's control. As for the 3 major amoxicillin manufacturers, in a statement to NBC, UK pharmaceutical company Hickman said, in part, "We understand the importance of this medication and are looking at ways to increase production."
I'm really praying that my children don't get sick again while we have this shortage.
Now, when it comes to alternative choices, doctors say it depends on the infection. And if you're concerned about access, you should chat with a medical professional. And always remember that if the issue is not bacterial, antibiotics will likely not be needed.
Now to a disturbing legacy left in South Dakota after Canada pledged billions in reparations for creating boarding schools to forcibly assimilate Native American children. And the U.S. is now under pressure to do the same. NBC News senior investigative and legal correspondent Cynthia McFadden investigates.
A scene more than a century in the making, a search for the bodies of Indigenous children, perhaps long hidden in this basement at the Red Cloud Indian School in South Dakota. This is the first public excavation of its kind in the country.
I've heard several stories to that. To me, they're heartfelt.
The only Native American leading this kind of work, Marcia Small.
I get really emotional in these places. The work we do is sacred.
Small uses ground-penetrating radar to locate remains of children, forcibly taken from their families, many abused. One published report says 40,000 children are believed to have died at the schools beginning in the 1800s. Surrounded by the deep canyons of the Badlands, Red Cloud sits on the Pine Ridge Reservation. It is one of the poorest places in America. One expert says more than 100,000 children attended the federally created schools, as one U.S. general put it, to kill the Indian and save the man, as this 1929 newsreel suggests.
They are being rapidly brought from their state of comparative savagery and barbarism to one of civilization.
89-year-old Basil Braveheart went to Red Cloud, then known as Holy Rosary Mission School, beginning in the 1930s. He remembers fearing one of the Catholic priests who would come into the dorms at night.
For what purpose?
Looking for little boys.
To have sex with, presumably.
That's it. I became a shallow breather, thinking that if I don't breathe loud, I might disappear.
Alex Whiteplume also experienced life at the schools. A former president of the tribe, he confronted the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, Brian Newland, himself a Native American, when he showed up unexpectedly.
There were a lot of pleasantries until you stood up.
Well, I had to correct the history. What we're sitting on here is Roman Catholic Church land, stolen in our treaty territory. And then the Assistant Secretary of Interior saying, we're going to bring you money, we're going to bring your language back. That just ticked me off something awful. And so he should face up to the truth, and America should face up to the truth.
So you heard a former president of this tribe say, we want to hear the word genocide.
The purpose of these schools was forcible assimilation to separate Indian people from their lands. There hasn't been one single Indian person in this country who's not living with the impacts of and the legacy of these boarding schools.
It's hard to know what genocide is if this isn't it.
Again, we have to tell the whole story, and we've got to paint the full picture and acknowledge our own role. And we're at step one.
But while Braveheart tells us he would like the U.S. government to apologize, he finds peace in his grandmother's words.
The wisdom that she taught me was to forgive the unforgivable.
Whiteplume sees it very differently.
I will not accept a cheap apology. America never owned up to the genocide. We should deal with it.
So far, no human remains have been found at Red Cloud, which has launched a truth and healing effort. And the Jesuits who run the school are helping to fund Small's work. Community members we talked to say they will not rest until the whole truth, whatever it might be, is known. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News, Pine Ridge Reservation, South Dakota.
Incredible report. Wow.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. And coming up, pointing the finger at familiar faces. Several celebrities are being named in a new class action crypto lawsuit.
Yeah, more on the claims that could cost them billions. This is Morning News Now. We're back now with a talker, the new fallout from the crash of crypto giant FTX. Now, several celebrities who promoted the platform have been named in a class action lawsuit involving the company.
That's right. The lawsuit alleges FTX and its CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, violated Florida law and misled customers, costing them $11 billion in damages. Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, Steph Curry, Shaq, and Larry David are among the stars named in the suit.
For more, we're joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, good morning. I mean, first of all, just Larry David being into crypto is just something that got me when I first was reading about this. Let's talk through exactly what's going on here. So the lawsuit blames the company's former CEOs, we mentioned, and those celebrities that Zinkley just said who promoted the company for the losses suffered by the investors, so people who bought into this crypto. Could those celebrities face some kind of punishment here? Let's just start there. And if so, how serious could that punishment potentially be?
Bankman-Fried is the real defendant here. In fact, he even tweeted things that might make him liable on the hook for what the complaint alleges. But the celebrities here are really more about deep pockets and a splash in the media. We're talking about it because it's Steph Curry and Shaq. But the theory of liability against them is much more difficult because it's essentially that a jury would have to believe that Shaq somehow knows a whole lot about cryptocurrency. Shaq knows about basketball. Sure, he's an entrepreneur. But how many people honestly think Steph Curry is endorsing cryptocurrency, knowing how cryptocurrency really works? Most of us don't, and I include me in that group.
And Danny, I want to dig into the lawsuit a bit because it accuses FTX of targeting, quote, unsophisticated investors, and we know crypto is still a relatively new phenomenon, at least newer than traditional banks. So could the celebrities named in the suit say the same thing, as you almost alluded to, that they basically didn't fully understand what they were involved in?
The defendant's theme here will be, but let the buyer beware, caveat emptor in Latin. And that means basically, look, if you get involved in any kind of investing, especially cryptocurrencies, then you do so at your own risk. Do they have a problem, these defendants, that they may not have disclosed that they were paid? Maybe. But, you know, some of the campaigns were even like hashtag I'm not an expert. Look, cryptocurrency is complicated. It's more complicated than even regular investing. So the idea that people relied on Steph Curry as a knowledgeable cryptocurrency person is a bit of a stretch. But look, I mean, the theory of liability is that these folks endorsed it, didn't do their due diligence, and may have misled consumers. But honestly, who isn't misled when it comes to cryptocurrency? Because it's so unbelievably complicated.
It's so complicated. And also, I mean, it's just had such this downfall, which people, you know, acted surprised by. People have their retirement in here and everything. I mean, it's all very confusing. Now, Danny, this is also all playing out just a week after the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Talk to us about the impact that has on this lawsuit.
Well, it's no surprise this lawsuit comes after the filing because, look, this is a company that is plummeting, and all of the problems with this company are now coming to light, including Bankman-Fried's own tweets that essentially appear to make a lot of admissions that are probably not so good for Bankman-Fried. But if it's true, Bankman-Fried has lost, what, 99% of his value? He's no longer really a deep-pocket defendant. There may not be any money left, which is why they're looking to people like Gisele Bündchen and Tom Brady, because they have deep pockets.
Danny Ceballos, as always, we appreciate you walking us through this stuff. This is a weird one. You've helped us out. Thank you so much. Now, from the FTX, crash to Twitter's tailspin, how did we get here and what happens next? NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward explains these stunning tech downfalls. Hopefully, he'll help us understand it a little bit more on Hellscape, Inside the Meltdowns at Twitter and FTX. You can check it out tonight at 10:30 p.m. right here on NBC News Now. Don't miss it.
And now to our financial headlines. And Starbucks workers are planning to go on strike for Red Cup Day, one of the chain's biggest sales days of the year.
Yeah, CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us now to explain that and give us some other financial news this morning. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah, Zinklik, good morning to you. Yes, so workers at more than 100 Starbucks stores in 25 states are going on strike today. It's the largest labor action since a campaign to unionize stores began last year. The walkouts coincide with Starbucks' annual Red Cup Day, when customers can get a free reusable cup when they order a holiday drink. Now, it's typically one of the busiest days of the year. Workers say they're seeking better pay and a more consistent schedule. A majority of Americans are delaying a major financial milestone, such as home improvement or buying or leasing a car, due to the state of the economy. That's according to a new survey from Bankrate. Nearly 60% of people say they've declined to take part in activities or events in the past year, such as going on vacation or dining out with friends or family. An overwhelming number of people say their quality of life has been negatively impacted by the economy. Apple has rolled out its new emergency SOS service for the iPhone 14. If you're out of range, you'll now be able to send messages to emergency responders via a satellite connection. A green SOS message button will appear on the bottom of the right screen. After pressing the button, you can answer a series of questions such as what's the emergency and who needs help. Now, once you're connected to the satellite, the iPhone will send your location, your answers, and your medical ID. Older iPhone models do not have the satellite hardware, guys.
All right, Savannah, thank you so much.
You got it.
Coming up after her high-profile defamation trial, now actress Amber Heard is getting a major show of support.
Up next, the open letter from top feminist groups that's sending a message to all domestic violence survivors. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. National feminist organizations are breaking their silence on Amber Heard and that lawsuit, that defamation lawsuit filed by her ex-husband, Johnny Depp, nearly 6 months after we saw that all happen.
Yeah, they wrote an open letter exclusively shared with NBC News in support of Heard and denounced, quote, the rising misuse of defamation lawsuits to silence people who report domestic and sexual abuse. NBC News Digital and tech and culture reporter Kat Tenbarge joins us now. Kat, thank you for joining us. So tell us more about the groups behind the letter, why they thought it was important to write it now, and the message that they're hoping to send.
Sure. So the group that authored the letter was primarily composed of anonymous women who have been quietly supporting Amber Heard on social media for months. These are average women, many of whom identify as domestic violence survivors or sexual assault survivors, who have been working over the past month or so to reach out to these feminist organizations and rally support around this letter for Amber Heard.
Hey, Kat, so happy to have you on Morning News Now. Now, following this verdict, advocacy groups like Time's Up, if we remember, they were criticized for not commenting on the Heard trial after championing victims, of course, at the height of the Me Too movement. Why do you think we're seeing more groups speaking out now? And also, I mean, people may remember how this played out on social media. It was not a lot of support for Amber Heard. So walk us through how they got here and now why we're hearing about it in this particular timing.
Definitely. So some of the people who have signed this letter were among some of those few voices who were speaking out on social media. And at the time, there was such an overwhelming support for Johnny Depp that a lot of the people speaking out in support of Amber Heard or to counter that narrative were met with online harassment, silencing, and intense criticism that lasted for months. And I think, you know, seeing how some of these women have banded together to rally these organizations around this open letter, it shows that a lot of these feminist groups were on Heard's side, but some of them maybe didn't feel empowered to come out and support her at that time due to the overwhelming amount of backlash that people in support of Amber Heard were facing. So their strength in numbers, I think that points to the reason that a lot of groups felt they were able to sign this letter at this stage. And it also points to some of the long-lasting effects of the trial and how it was received by the general public. The letter notes that there is this uptick in defamation lawsuits being used against people who accuse men or individuals of sexual assault, of domestic violence. We've seen this play out in more celebrity relationships. There are other celebrity men who have launched these types of lawsuits against their former accusers. We're also seeing it play out with all different types of victims advocacy at every level.
And Kat, briefly, as we're wrapping up, what do you hope we as a culture learn from this case?
So what these experts are saying is that a lot of misconceptions around domestic violence and these types of abusive relationships were spread during this trial. A lot of people watched the trial but walked away viewing Amber Heard as the aggressor and Johnny Depp as the victim. And what these experts are saying is, you got it wrong. So I think people should take a look at what they're saying, take a look at what some of the realities of these types of abusive relationships are, and consider the way that the monetized social media environment around this trial may have led to influence their opinion.
Kat, thank you so much. We appreciate you being on with us. Important conversation here and great reporting. Thank you.
Really great insight.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
And that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news, of course, continues right now. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.